all the way back into the past. It was, just to let you know how it started, Shel Dorf had helped to put on a convention in Detroit with Jerry Bales, who's pretty much the founder of comic fandom as we know it. And they put on something called the Detroit Triple Fan Fair. It's triple because it featured comics, science fiction, and movies. And so, when Shel helped his parents to retire to San Diego in 1969, he helped them drive their stuff out and move into an apartment in Claremont. And when he got here in the 60s in Southern California from Detroit, he never left. So he actually moved into his parents' apartment, and he couldn't stand to go back east, and he stayed here. And he didn't have a job at the time or any money, so his father happened to see a little ad in a penny saver, classified ad from someone named Barry Alfonso saying he wanted to buy comics, and his dad said, well, you got comics. He said, oh, why don't you go sell some to him? So Shel called up Barry, and Barry came over, turned out to be 12 years old, not a lot of money, and he said, well, I don't have money to buy all your comics, but there's this guy, Richard Alf, who just started advertising in Marvel, and he's here in town, why don't you go see him? And so Shel called him up, and Richard came over to see his collection, and while Richard looked at the comics, Shel started telling him about the Detroit Triple Fan Fair and asked if he'd like to do something like that in San Diego. And he said, well, you think about it, talk to some of his friends. So friends included me and Bob Sork, and we got together with Shel along with Barry and a fan artist customer of Richard's from Escondido named Dan Stewart, and we decided to do Comic-Con. And that's how it started. We shortly after that went up to visit Jack Kirby, and that really kind of cemented the whole thing and convinced us that Shel was for real, because we figured if he could get us in to the Mount Olympus of comics and actually visit the king of comics, that we could do anything, and that he was for real. And so one of the early people we met on our field trips up to Los Angeles to visit Jack and the comic stores up there was Mark Evanier. And we're going to turn it over to Mark here and talk about a little early days of meeting the San Diego fans and the Comic-Con.
Well, I first met Shel and a bunch of the fans. I was working for a company called Marvel Mania International in 1970, which was this fellow who was I think the term is crook, had gotten the rights to do a mail order thing, and he was selling Marvel posters and Marvel decals, and Jack Kirby had recommended me to him. He said, you got to hire this guy, because this guy didn't know anything. This guy's name was Don Wallace. He didn't know anything about comics. So Jack recommended that he hire me, and I was helping run the company. And one day, Shel walks in. Shel and about 20 guys walk in. They had taken a field trip to Forey Ackerman's house. Do we have a seat for Scott?
Yeah, I carry my own.
All right. He had taken a caravan. Shel did these things. There'd be carpools of people, some of the cars driven by the mothers of fans, and he took them all to Forey Ackerman's house, and then they came by this Marvel Mania office that was on La Cienega afterwards and walked in, and Shel told us all about this convention they were going to be putting on. And then the man who owned the company, Don Wallace, was out there. Shel came back a couple of days later on his own to pitch for Marvel's support. He was trying to get Marvel support by way of Marvel Mania. And he told us about this convention. We said, great. In the meantime, Jack Kirby had told me about the convention, because Shel had been telling him. And then one day, I wasn't going to be working with Jack today. My friend Steve Sherman and I were working for Jack at the time. And we get this panic call from Jack's wife, Roz, saying, Shel Dorf has just shown up. He brought 20 people with him. And we go running out to Jack's house. She wanted us to come out and help. She wanted us to throw them out, is what she wanted us to do. And that's the day I believe I met Scott. And I believe I met Dave Stevens that day, and Mike, and John Tound, and various other people. I don't know, were you on that, Roger, on that trip? There were a couple of these, so I don't remember who was on which days.
That's how Roger became part of the San Diego Five String Mob, was that he was there.